The interior of U-96 is dimly lit by flickering red emergency lights, casting long shadows on the sweat-drenched faces of the crew. The air is thick with tension, amplified by the relentless pinging of sonar as enemy destroyers prowl overhead. The men, clad in grimy uniforms, are soaked with perspiration, their breaths shallow and hurried. Captain Lieutenant Lehmann-Willenbrock grips the periscope, barking orders in a sharp, commanding tone. "Torpedo loss!" A sudden, deafening whoosh signifies the launch of a torpedo. All eyes shift to the gauges and dials, each crew member holding their breath, waiting for the impact. Above, depth charges explode, shaking the U-boat violently. Loose tools and supplies clatter to the floor as the crew brace themselves against the metal walls. Water sprays from burst pipes, and the haunting sound of creaking metal fills the air. Amid the chaos, the chief engineer shouts updates from the control room, while others scramble to repair minor leaks. The sense of camaraderie and shared fear binds the crew as they navigate the razor's edge between survival and disaster. Finally, a muffled boom echoes through the hull. The torpedo has struck its target. A brief moment of relief flickers across the men's faces before they return to the grim task of evading retaliation, knowing the hunt is far from over. Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock was born on December 11, 1911, in Bremen, then part of the German Empire. In April 1931, he joined the Kriegsmarine of the Weimar Republic as an officer candidate, beginning his basic training with the naval infantry. He was promoted to sea cadet in October 1931 and underwent Navy officer training from March 1932 to January 1933. Following this, he advanced to the rank of midshipman and spent 2 years in at-sea training. In August 1933, he was appointed navigation officer of the naval tender Weser and was promoted to senior midshipman in January 1935. In April 1935, Lehmann-Willenbrock was commissioned as a Lieutenant zur See and served as signals officer aboard the cruiser Karlsruhe. In September 1936, he was posted to the naval barracks at Glücksburg for 5 months before receiving orders to join the sailing vessel Horst Wessel as watch officer. He reported aboard in February 1937, shortly after being promoted to senior lieutenant in January. Lehmann-Willenbrock served on the Horst vessel for 26 months before applying to transfer to the German Navy's submarine branch. Lehmann-Willenbrock joined the U-boat arm of the German Navy in April 1939. After serving as executive officer aboard U-8, he was promoted to captain and assumed command of U-5 in December 1939. U-5 was a Type IIA U-boat modeled after the Finnish submarine Vesico. Measuring 134 feet 2 inches and displacing 254 tons, she could dive to depths of 260 to 490 feet. The submarine had a maximum surface speed of 13 knots and could travel 1,600 nautical miles at 8 knots surfaced, or 35 nautical miles at 4 knots submerged. U-5 was equipped with 3 21-inch torpedo tubes at the bow, carrying 5 torpedoes or up to 12 Type A torpedo mines, along with a 2-centimeter anti-aircraft gun. Her crew complement was 25. Captain Lieutenant Lehmann-Willenbrock's first patrol lasted 15 days and took place along the Norwegian coast during Operation Hartmut, the U-boat campaign supporting the invasion of Norway. The operation's reconnaissance and screening goals largely succeeded, but Hartmut is remembered for numerous torpedo malfunctions and the loss of 4 U-boats. These issues arose despite Germany's strong performance against Britain in the Atlantic at the time. Critics argue that deploying U-boats during Operation Weserübung was a misallocation of resources. The G7E torpedo's magnetic pistols proved unreliable in cold weather, with nearly 2/3 failing due to premature detonation, failure to arm, or running too deep. Coastal operations further challenged commanders accustomed to open seas, where tides and currents have minimal impact. In shallow waters, torpedoes may have been thrown off course or run too deep, contributing to missed shots. Speculation suggests that this campaign's torpedo failures pushed German Naval Command to enhance the weapon's reliability. Renowned U-boat commanders like Prien, Schulze, and Schütze experienced their only patrols without sinking any tonnage. 4 U-boats were lost during the campaign. After U-5's return, Lehmann-Willenbrock was transferred to the newly commissioned U-96, later made famous by Lothar-Günther Buchheim's 1973 best-selling novel Das Boot and its 1981 Oscar-nominated film adaptation, both inspired by his 1941 experience aboard the submarine as a war correspondent. U-96 was a Type VIIc U-boat significantly larger than U-5, measuring 220 feet in length. It could operate at depths of up to 750 feet, with a maximum surface speed of 17.7 knots and a submerged speed of 7.6 knots. When submerged, it had a range of 80 nautical miles at 4 knots, and when surfaced, it could travel 8,500 nautical miles at 10 knots. U-96 was equipped with 5 21-inch torpedo tubes, 4 at the bow and 1 at the stern, carried 14 torpedoes, and was armed with an 8.8 centimeter SK-C-35 naval gun with 220 rounds and a 2 centimeter C-30 anti-aircraft gun. The crew complement ranged from 44 to 60. U-96 was commissioned on September 14, 1940, with Kapitän Lieutenant Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock, affectionately called the Old Man by his crew, in command. The nickname was ironic, as U-boat commanders were often under 25, leading crews of teenagers. After 3 months of training, U-96 joined the 7th Flotilla based in Saint-Nazaire, France. During her service with the flotilla, she undertook 11 patrols, sinking 27 ships totaling 181,206 gross registered tons or GRT, damaging 4 others totaling 33,043 GRT, and causing one vessel of 8,888 GRT to be declared a total loss. She participated in 11 wolf packs and was recognized by her emblem, a green laughing sawfish, which later became the symbol of the 9th Flotilla under Lehmann-Willenbrock's command. U-96 left Kiel on December 4, 1940 for her first patrol, navigating through the North Sea, passing between the Faroe and Shetland Islands, and entering the North Atlantic. On December 11th, U-96 encountered the scattered convoy HX-92 and attacked the British passenger ship Rotorua, sinking her at 15:12 with a single torpedo. Most passengers and crew survived, but the ship's master, the convoy commodore, and 21 others were lost. Later that day, U-96 targeted the Dutch merchant ship Toa with a torpedo, striking her amidships. When the ship failed to sink, a second torpedo was launched at 21:30, but she still stayed afloat. The U-boat then began shelling her, and Toa finally sank at 22:42. Of her crew, 37 abandoned ship in 3 lifeboats, one of which capsized, drowning its occupants. 19 survivors were rescued by an escort. An attack on Cardita with a torpedo was unsuccessful. In the early hours of December 12th, U-96 targeted the Swedish steamer Stureholm, sinking her with a single torpedo at 01:56. 2.5 hours later, the unescorted Belgian ship Macedonier was spotted and struck amidships with a torpedo, sinking within 10 minutes. The crew abandoned ship quickly, and all but 4 of the 47 on board survived. 2 days later, U-96 sank the British motor ship Western Prince with 2 torpedoes. That evening, at 21:02, U-96 fired on the British steamer Empire Razorbill, attempting to halt her. After 6 shots from the deck gun, scoring 3 hits, U-96 abandoned the attack on the armed merchantman due to worsening weather. On December 18th, U-96 encountered the Dutch motor tanker Pendrecht and struck her astern with a single torpedo at 16:15. Although damaged, the ship stayed afloat. The crew, initially abandoning ship, later reboarded and managed to sail her to Rothesay under escort from a British destroyer. U-96, having lost contact overnight, stayed in the area and spotted a British battleship with escorts but was unable to launch an attack. After 26 days at sea, U-96 reached Lorient in occupied France on December 29, having sunk 5 ships totaling 37,037 GRT and damaged 2 others totaling 15,864 GRT. On January 9, 1941, U-96 departed Lorient for her second war patrol, returning to the waters west of Scotland. Early on January 16, she attacked the British SS Oropesa, launching 3 torpedoes over 2 hours before finally sinking the ship. Of those aboard, 106 passengers and crew were lost, while 143 survivors were rescued by British destroyers. The following day, U-96 encountered the unescorted British passenger steamer Almeida Star. The first torpedo, launched at 07:45, struck amidships, halting the ship. A second torpedo hit the stern 20 minutes later but failed to sink her. 2 additional torpedoes were required, with the fourth and final one launched at 13:55. 3 minutes later, Almeida Star sank, with all 360 passengers and crew lost. U-96 returned to Lorient on January 22, 1941, after 14 days at sea, having sunk 2 ships totaling 29,054 GRT. On January 30, 1941, U-96 departed Lorient for her third war patrol in the North Atlantic. 2 weeks later, she spotted a straggler from convoy HX-106, the British motor tanker Clea. Shortly after 1500, U-96 struck Clea amidships with a single torpedo, breaking her in half and igniting a fire. The wreck was then destroyed with artillery. Later that day, U-96 encountered another tanker, Arthur F. Corwin, already damaged by torpedoes from U-103 and lagging behind the same convoy. U-96 launched 2 more torpedoes, sinking the burning ship. All 59 crew members were lost. The following morning, HX-106 escorts attacked U-96 with 4 depth charges, but she escaped unscathed. At 02:27 on February 18, the British Black Osprey, part of convoy HX-107, was hit by a torpedo. A second torpedo sank the ship 12 minutes later. Of the 36 crew members who abandoned ship in rough seas, only 11 were rescued 2 days later. On February 21, a Focke-Wulf Condor attacked and damaged a straggler from convoy OB-287, the Scottish Standard, killing 5 crew members. The remaining crew abandoned ship, and 39 survivors were rescued by the escort HMS Montgomery. The next day, February 22, U-96 found the abandoned tanker. Despite a destroyer patrolling nearby, U-96 launched 2 torpedoes, sinking the Scottish Standard. After the second explosion, HMS Montgomery pursued the U-boat for 5 hours, dropping 37 depth charges but causing no serious damage. On February 23, 1941, U-96 intercepted convoy OB-288 and joined forces with U-69, U-73, U-95, U-107, and the Italian submarine Michele Bianchi in an attack. The U-boat sank 9 ships, including 1 escort, with U-96 claiming 3 of the vessels. The first target, the British cargo ship Anglo-Peruvian, was mistaken for an auxiliary cruiser and struck with 2 torpedoes at 23:27. The ship sank within 3 minutes, with 29 crew members lost and 17 survivors later rescued by a British merchant ship. Later that night, at 01:16 on February 24th, U-96 attacked the unescorted British SS Linaria with a single torpedo, sinking her 25 minutes after a stern hit. All 35 crew members perished. An hour later, U-96 targeted the British SS Sirikishna, hitting her amidships. 6 hours later, a second torpedo was launched at the abandoned wreck, which included the convoy commodore, Rear Admiral R.A.A. Plowden, DSO. There were no survivors. After evading an attack by the escort HMS Churchill, U-96 headed for port in Saint-Nazaire, France, arriving on February 28 after 30 days at sea, having sunk 7 ships totaling 45,391 GRT. Upon her return, Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock was presented with the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, awarded to him 2 days earlier. On February 25, 1942, the Daily Wehrmachtsbericht announced, Kapitän Leutnant Lehmann-Willenbrock's boat has contributed to the great success of the U-boat force with 55,600 tons sunk. Kapitän Leutnant Lehmann-Willenbrock has sunk a total of 125,580 tons of enemy shipping in a short period. On April 12, 1941, U-96 departed for her fourth war patrol. On April 16, she encountered convoy OB-309 but was promptly attacked by the escort HMS Rockingham, sustaining some damage. On April 28, U-96 joined her sister boat U-95, which was shadowing convoy HX-121. At 19:25, U-96 launched 3 torpedoes targeting 3 tankers. The first, the British motor tanker Oilfield, erupted in flames upon impact, with only 8 of her 55 crew surviving. The second, the Norwegian tanker Caledonia, was struck in the engine room, killing 7 crew members instantly. 5 more crew members perished after drifting into the burning wreck of Oilfield nearby, while 25 survivors were rescued by the ship Zafaren. The third torpedo accidentally hit the British steamship Port Hardy when it missed its intended target. Before the torpedo struck, U-96 was forced to submerge as the Flower-class corvette HMS Gladiolus arrived. Port Hardy lost 1 crew member, while Zafaren rescued 97 passengers and crew. Shortly after 1300 the following day, a slightly damaged U-96 was attacked by a Lockheed Hudson from No. 2 33 Squadron RAF, but the bombs caused no additional damage. On the evening of May 1st, U-96 unsuccessfully targeted an unescorted freighter before making contact with another convoy on May 4th, though contact was lost the next day. On May 7th, a short Sunderland spotted U-96 shortly after noon and dropped 32 bombs over 2.5 hours. A week later, on May 14th, a 4-engine aircraft attacked the U-boat, dropping 3 bombs. In the early hours of May 19th, the British steamship Empire Ridge crossed paths with U-96, 90 nautical miles west of Bloody Foreland, Ireland. Mistaking her for a 9,000-ton tanker, U-96 fired 2 torpedoes. The ship broke in half upon impact, sinking with 31 of her 33 crew members. After 41 days at sea, U-96 returned to Saint-Nazaire on May 22nd, having sunk 4 ships totaling 30,227 GRT. U-96 began her 5th war patrol on June 19, 1941. Departing Saint-Nazaire for the North Atlantic. 2 weeks into the patrol, on July 5, 1941, about 300 nautical miles north of the Azores, she encountered a small convoy led by the survey vessel HMS Challenger. The convoy included the armed merchant cruiser HMS Cathay and SS Anselm, a 5,954 GRT cargo and passenger liner converted into a troop ship, escorted by 3 Flower-class corvettes, HMS Lavender, Petunia, and Starwort. Believing she had hit the survey vessel and AMC, U-96 had actually struck Anselm twice, sinking her and killing 254 people. Although Starwort's ASDIC was inoperative, Lavender and Petunia launched a depth charge counterattack, causing serious damage to U-96 and forcing her to cut the patrol short. After 21 days at sea, U-96 returned to Saint-Nazaire, having sunk a single ship totaling 5,954 GRT. On August 2, 1941, U-96 departed for her 6th patrol in the North Atlantic. By August 12th, she was operating with Group Greenland. 2 weeks later, on August 28th, she joined Group Prince Elector. In early September, U-96 became part of Group Seawolf before heading back to base. She arrived in Saint-Nazaire on September 12th after 42 days at sea, without engaging any ships. On October 27th, U-96 departed for her 7th patrol with journalist Lothar-Günther Buchheim on board. Buchheim later documented his experiences in the now famous book Das Boot, with Lehmann-Willenbrock serving as the inspiration for the commander in the story. She joined Group Stostrup, and on October 31st, the group intercepted convoy OS-10. U-96 fired 4 torpedoes from long range, one of which struck the Dutch SS Bennekom. The ship sank 30 minutes after impact, claiming 9 of her 56 crew members. After the attack, the sloop HMS Lulworth arrived and forced U-96 to submerge with gunfire. The U-boat evaded a barrage of 27 depth charges without damage. The following day, U-96 encountered 2 additional escorts, HMS Gorliston and Verbena, but successfully escaped once more. In November, U-96 patrolled the North Atlantic as part of Groups Sturtebeker and Benecke before covertly entering the neutral port of Vigo, Spain, to resupply from the interned German MV Bessel on November 27. After departing Vigo, U-96 headed for the Strait of Gibraltar, intending to enter the Mediterranean. However, on November 30th, the U-boat was spotted by a ferry swordfish and severely damaged by 2 bombs. Unable to continue her mission, U-96 turned towards Saint-Nazaire. En route, she encountered the Spanish SS Cabo de Hornos, returning from South America after delivering Jewish refugees to Curaçao, following Brazil's refusal to admit them. When a torpedo missed, the ship was stopped and her papers were inspected. On December 6, 1941, after 41 days at sea, U-96 returned to Saint-Nazaire, having sunk 1 ship totaling 5,998 GRT. During her 8th patrol, U-96 achieved success off the Canadian East Coast. On February 20, 1942, she sank the Lake Oswego near Halifax, launching a torpedo from just 500 yards away. On February 22, she sank the Torungan off Nova Scotia and later attacked the Cars the same day. The torpedo impact broke the ship in 2, the bow quickly sank while the stern was beached and declared a total loss. The submarine's final success on this patrol came on March 9th, when she sank the Tyr approximately 100 nautical miles off Halifax. In March 1942, Lehmann-Willenbrock departed U-96 to be promoted to Korvettenkapitän and take command of the 9th U-boat flotilla in Brest. U-96 was destroyed by U.S. bombs on March 30, 1945, while in the submarine pens at Wilhelmshaven. Throughout her service, she suffered no crew casualties. From his patrols with U-96, Lehmann-Willenbrock was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class, Iron Cross First Class U-boat War Badge, Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, and the Knight's Cross with oak leaves for his accomplishments. He sank 24 ships totaling 170,237 gross register tons, damaged 2 ships totaling 15,864 GRT, and caused 1 ship of 8,888 GRT to be declared a total loss. In total, 1,272 lives were lost. On September 2, 1944, he took command of U-256 at the Brest U-boat bunker just days before the town fell. Brest was surrounded and eventually stormed by the U.S. 8th Corps in a grueling battle. The German garrison, heavily entrenched, included Fallschirmjäger, Kriegsmarine personnel from U-boat and E-boat crews to battleship sailors, many of whom were survivors of sunken or damaged vessels, naval infantry of the Marine Stostrup Company, and troops from disbanded Luftwaffe field divisions sent to reinforce the Normandy coast. Fighting was intense, with soldiers advancing house to house. During the battle on September 4, 1944, under the command of Korvettenkapitän Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock, U-256 became the last U-boat to depart Brest before the port fell to Allied forces. The journey from Brest to Bergen, Norway, marked U-256's final patrol. Equipped with a jury-rigged snorkel, the submarine evaded Allied anti-submarine forces, cruising far west of the British Isles. She arrived in Bergen on October 17, 1944, after 44 days under strict radio silence, leading control to initially presume her lost. declared beyond repair, the boat was decommissioned on October 23. In Bergen, Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock was appointed commander of the 11th U-boat flotilla in December, and served in this role until Germany's surrender in Norway on May 9, 1945. After a year in captivity, Lehmann-Willenbrock returned to Germany in May 1946 and collaborated with Carl Friedrich Merton on salvaging sunken ships in the Rhine. In 1948, he and 3 friends constructed the sailing ship Magellan. They sailed to Buenos Aires, Argentina, where they organized a regatta. He later served as skipper of various merchant ships. In March 1959, he displayed remarkable bravery as captain of the freighter Inga Bastion, leading his crew to rescue 57 survivors from the burning Brazilian ship Comandante Lyra. In 1969, he became captain of the German nuclear research vessel Otto Hahn, a position he held for over a decade. In recognition of his exceptional post-war service, he was awarded the Bundesverdienstkreuz am Bande, Federal German Merit Cross Second Class, in 1974. He served for many years as chairman of the U-Bootskameradschaft Bremen, U-Boat Comrades Association Bremen, whose headquarters still bear his name. During the entirety of the Second World War, Fregatten Kapitän Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock went on 10 patrols and sank 25 ships for 179,125 tons and damaged 2 ships at 15,864 tons. This score places him at 6th on the list of most successful U-boat commanders of World War II, qualifying him as a U-boat ace. While he may not be known for his actual wartime exploits such as Günther Prien, his legacy lives on in the most famous U-boat film of all time.